our subcommittee today and for giving us an update of this FAA Reauthorization Act of 2018. Building on some of the questions by my colleagues regarding college centers of excellence, Section 631 of that measure authorized a new program known as Community and Technical College Centers of Excellence in Small Unmanned Aircraft Systems Technology Training. This section is intended to help establish an expanded role for community colleges in education and training in various applications of small drone technology. In my district, Allen Hancock College is a community college that is focused on innovation and has the interest in the Section 631 Centers of Excellence program. The college is located on a site of the former Hancock College of Aeronautics, which opened its doors 90 years ago and trained thousands of pilots for service during World War II. Section 631 provides opportunities for a school such as Allen Hancock College to work with industry partners to train students in the latest applications of drone technology. April 5, 2019 was the deadline for the FAA to have established a process to designate community colleges UAS Centers of Excellence. Could you update this subcommittee on the status of Section 631 for the Centers of Excellence program? And two, what type of consultation has taken place with the Department of Education and Labor to develop this program?
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal, for that question. In the discussion earlier with Mr. Gallagher, we have no issue with the intent, nor the deadline. The problem we ran into ultimately was that centers of excellence are not, we have many of them, agreements with Center of Excellence agreements, but they're not vehicles for grants. So I would love to see a lot more small colleges get help with providing UAS training. And so would Secretary Chow. That was one of the key conversations we had in our workforce summit last year around this time. I will commit to get back to you, sir, on the engagement that we've had with DOL and DOE and the extent to which we have brought them into the discussion. If we need to expand that interagency discussion, we'll certainly do that. The goal is to improve and increase and energize our secondary education in these fields, and so I commit to work with you and the other agencies as necessary.
To that end, how could schools such as Allen Hancock College prepare for future consideration of this section's benefits?
I think a desire to have curricula that address these emerging technologies is preparation enough. I think it's incumbent upon the government entities to facilitate, and certainly not to provide any sort of hindrance to those who are willing and want to bring that into their curricula. You know, one of the things that we have at the FAA is accreditation for aviation schools. We have 4-year accreditation, 2-year accreditation, and we're trying to advertise to young people that, you know what, education's expensive, but you can go to a 2-year vocational tech school for aviation in the aviation world and come out with really good careers, really good professions, and I'm sure that as the UAS industry grows, there'll be more and more opportunities in that area as well.
Thank you. As was discussed by some of my previous colleagues, I too have been contacted by a number of my constituents about airplane noise. And the FAA reauthorization included several provisions to address this issue. What is the estimated timeframe for the FAA to implement these mandates? And how is the FAA working with communities like mine to address these issues?
Well, sir, there's noise is a huge issue nationwide, and we are actively working all of the provisions in the bill. We have every intention of meeting all the requirements. Since they are different, a number of different provisions and different requirements, different lengths of implementation, I can assure you, sir, that we are working all of them, and we have every intention of meeting the requirements of the bill.
Since I'm out of time, if you could just get me some timelines, that would be great.
I will get back to you on the timeline, sir.
Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Before I recognize Representative Perry, I just want to clarify the record. The last time the United States conducted a full-scale evacuation was 1999 for the 777, and then Boeing based their certification on the 787 through comparative analysis to that. And I don't know whether EASA requires or not, but Airbus, did that in Europe and not under our auspices. And then finally, in terms of recent incidents, a number of people died on an Aeroflot plane who were unable to evacuate. We don't know all the circumstances there since it took place in Russia. Anyway, Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Administrator Elwell, the provision that I had placed in the FAA bill required the FAA to update existing regulations to authorize the carriage of property by owners of UAS for compensation or hire. In your testimony, you state this work is ongoing and the FAA is currently meeting the intent of the mandate through an exemption process. I am pleased to see the FAA grant the first certification this year, but it came only after a long and arduous process of seeking numerous exemptions from Part 135 provisions that do not and cannot apply to UAS. Avoiding this type of unnecessary, drawn-out, and burdensome exemption process was actually the intent of the mandate. The deadline to update these rules is October 5th of this year, 9 days from now, but we have yet to see any FAA action on this mandate, so it doesn't appear that this deadline will be met. Can you just provide us with a status update on the mandate and a new timeline for meeting it if you have one?
Yes, Mr. Perry, thank you for that question. The desire to have UAS perform those certificated activities, we share. We share the goal to get that done. It's important to point out there is frustration how long this is taking, but I think what we need to understand is unlike a lot of other countries that are trying to integrate UAS or trying to fly UAS and get UAS to do things, many other countries are doing that segregated. They're taking UAS and they're flying UAS in airspace where there's nothing else. We're integrating UAS, and it is a far, far more complex endeavor. Some of the activities you mentioned, sir, would require beyond visual line of sight carriage or over people. And these are rulemaking activities that have significant safety implications, and we have to make sure that we do the rulemaking for those specific abilities, the ability of an unmanned aviation vehicle to fly over people or beyond visual line of sight. These are very complex, and both of those capabilities, which would eventually be needed for commercial activity, rely upon remote ID, which we've talked about is going to take a little while. So I absolutely share your desire to see this happen. I think we're in a very, very dynamic time in aviation in this country between the attempts to integrate UAS, the doubling of commercial space launches. I mean, there's so much going on. But it's not going to be done as quickly as many would like, me included. We have to...
Administrator, we get it, I'm sure, and we know it's complicated, and